Okay, we're live. So today we're going to examine the question of whether Amazon's algorithms are the future of work. You may have heard in the news that Amazon and other companies are now utilizing robotics, AI, and algorithms, especially monitoring metrics, performance metrics algorithms, to watch the performance of workers. And that practice is spreading to more and more companies. And so today we're going to examine the question of, is this the future of AI? And we're going to start talking about the consequences for the workplace and for the economy in general. Okay. So just want to let you know before we dive into the topic, I live stream every Wednesday night, Sunday afternoons, Pacific Standard Time. And tomorrow I'm going to do a live stream on the latest housing data. I know right now we're in a red hot market, but some of the preliminary data that we're getting now is indicating that the market is either cooling or it may even be a turning point. So we'll tease out the details at tomorrow's live stream. So if you're interested in that, join me tomorrow. Okay. But moving on to the actual topic, um, what does Amazon's algorithms mean for the economy? Well, I think it's really good to get a human element into this analysis before we get deeper into all the numbers and the financial data and whatnot. So let's take a quick look at a video where CNN interviewed a warehouse worker. So the algorithms that are used by Amazon are applied to uh, large areas of the company. It now includes office workers, certainly delivery drivers, and the warehouse workers. So let's listen to his experience because I think that's going to give us some key perspective as to what's really going on with Amazon. Okay, so let me share that screen with you. Okay, so let's listen in. Okay, so let me just pause here real quick and say, okay, now we're clearly understanding that working in a warehouse has always been strenuous, right? That's really no surprise. I'm sympathetic to this gentleman here because, as he said, he's a young guy, but losing 10 pounds in the first week of a job is pretty shocking. And I'm not saying this to cast Amazon in an evil light. I'm not saying that they're demons or anything like that, but it's a reality of logistics operation. And you need people in the warehouse to manage the deliveries and the products. And it's a tough job, right? And this is a challenge that Amazon is taking on because now with Prime Day, same day delivery, and their guarantees, right? That is now their business model, right? That is how they're attracting new customers, and that a logistic demand is being passed on to not only the robots but the people as well. And so, knowing that the warehouse jobs are difficult, let's listen to him specifically talk about what's actually going on in terms of the performance monitoring. So I'm going to skip ahead in the video a little bit. Um, so there we go. Oh, sorry, this is excuse. Okay. So, uh, what we're discussing right now is the fact that these algorithms are monitoring your every move. They might be monitoring your move. They might be monitoring my move in my regular day job, and they're certainly monitoring the performance of this warehouse worker. And he says it explicitly: either you're working or you're non-productive. The judgment of the algorithms are pretty precise, and yet they're also imprecise at the same time, because they're not really intelligent, right? AI is not really intelligent. It's they just know that you're not stamping, so I wouldn't exactly call that intelligent, and yet the monitoring is taking place. And like I said, if you don't have an acceptable excuse, then simply not stamping is viewed as being non-productive. And you have to imagine that's a pretty difficult environment uh, to survive, right? And there's been stories. Again, I don't want to say that it's all bad, because obviously these people are signing on to work in these warehouses in the hopes that they can better their lives, have some sort of a career, or maybe if they have no dreams of that, maybe at least be able to pay their bills for the duration. Um, when possibly other opportunities come their way. But so we got a glimpse of what it's like to work at an Amazon warehouse factory. And I think now, with that human element in mind, let's take a look at the actual stories that are revolving around this phenomenon about algorithms in the workplace. And so let's take a look at um, an article. Let me enlarge the screen, and we're going to talk about what's going on with the delivery drivers. Where basically Bloomberg had an article that said, "Fired by bot at Amazon, it's you against the machine." And that phrase, "you against the machine," is very telling, and we're going to elaborate on that. But basically, it means that you know um, these contract workers are terminated in their employment by email, and that's determined by their algorithms, right? And when they say it's you against the machine, they're specifically talking about the fact that there is officially an appeal process, but nothing comes out of it, because it's like a closed loop. Um, Let me show you. There is no appeal. Sorry, I needed to bring the banner up, so I keep forgetting to do that. By the way, so the reason I put the banners up is because if you're joining this broadcast after it's gone live, and you want to skip to a particular topic, I've got the banners down here so that so you can go to that section that's of interest to you. But so this article is talking about what happens when um, Amazon judges that his performance is subpar. I mean, this guy Stephen Normandin has been working 4 years in Phoenix delivering packages, and he's a 63-year-old Army veteran, and he was fired by email by a machine. See a picture of him. He's looking very serious. I'm sure he was told to do that for the picture, and I'm not laughing at his situation. I mean, it's a very serious thing to lose your job. It's a crushing blow, especially when you get an email from a robot and it says, he's quoted, "I'm an old school kind of guy and I give every job 110%. This really upsets me because we're talking about my reputation. They say I didn't do the job when I know damn well that I did." Right. And remember we were talking in the video about how the warehouse worker was saying, if I'm not scanning something, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not being productive. His bosses told him, from the start of your first scan to the last scan at the end of the day, you are being watched and monitored and assessed and reassessed constantly. I don't know about you, but I would find that to be a pretty tension-filled environment. And again, the realities of these kind of logistics jobs notwithstanding, the presence and prevalence and the sheer power of the algorithms is something new to our human experience. And so let's go on with the story because um, there's something that's very revealing in this article, which is you know the article is saying that people familiar. What it says is people familiar with the strategy say Chief Executive Officer Jeff Bezos believes machines make decisions more quickly and accurately than humans, reducing costs and giving Amazon a competitive advantage. Right. So this is, in fact, a rather nebulous statement. Let's take a look at that statement again. Um, so Jeff Bezos is saying AI is better at making decisions. It's more accurate and gives a competitive advantage. And yet, it's not quite clear in real life exactly how that happens, right? Because, you know, like the guy said, like the warehouse guy said, all it knows is that I'm scanning and I'm not scanning. I'm sure there's other metrics involved as well, how long you're on break and all those kind of things. But um, is this really um, yeah, a matter of AI actually knowing whether you're being productive or not, or is it simply reading signals off a machine? And I think we already know the answer to that. It's simply reading um, signals from the machines, from the scanning software, and there's very little actual intelligence on the level of human intelligence that's taking place right here. Now, I highlighted this passage. Amazon started its gig style flex delivery service in 2015, and that year is going to be very important in our actual analysis. And I promise you that after we run through this, just these stories about what it's like and to be under these algorithms, we'll get into the actual economic analysis and the rationale. But I thought it was really important for us to kind of get in touch with what's really happening because, until you hear the stories, it's a little bit difficult to comprehend the challenges that there are in working for an AI. You know, so in 2015, Amazon um, started this Flex Driver program, and they were all happy to sign on because they're offering $25 an hour, and some of the other gigs have kind of dried up because of either lockdown, pandemics, or whatnot. But as the article says, Flex drivers discover algorithms are monitoring their every move. Did they get to the delivery station that they said they would? Did they complete their route in the prescribed window? Did they leave a package in full view or porch pirates instead of hidden behind a planter as requested? By the way, that's a complaint of mine as well. I have to admit, I get a little upset when deliveries are made right in plain view. But now I also understand the other side of it. The delivery drivers are facing a lot of obstacles to make that delivery. So continue on, Amazon algorithms scan the gusher of incoming data for performance patterns and decide which drivers get more routes and which are deactivated. Human feedback is rare. That's why I call this a closed loop because, you know, if algorithms are judging your performance and they make a mistake, if the algorithms themselves are making a mistake, then appealing to those same algorithms is not going to result in anything. Does that make sense? Yeah, of course. I mean, just you're appealing to the same algorithms and saying, reassess your own performance, but an algorithm is a mathematical equation. It has no human intelligence. So and continue on, the four categories that they have in terms of performance: fantastic, great, fair, or at risk. And clearly, at risk means you're about to be let go from the program. Now, here's something that is really interesting. They're talking about deliberation within Amazon itself, and says Amazon knew delegating work to machines would lead to mistakes and damaging headlines. These former managers said, but they decided it was cheaper to trust the algorithms than pay people to investigate mistaken firings, so long as the drivers could be easily replaced, right? So there are really two factors that are taking place here. From my perspective as an economist, um, so the two things that's happening here is that they're making probabilistic assessments about future cost and future reputational damage, and it's all rather abstract when you're sitting in the board meeting and discussing these reports. I've had to do something similar myself, and it's easy to lure yourself into believing that these small numbers with regards to errors of margin and whatnot are not meaningful. And we obviously know that when they impact human lives, they are in fact very meaningful. The other thing that is really crucial to that sentence right there is so long as the drivers could be easily replaced. Now, I've hinted at some of the things that economists are currently analyzing with regards to the gig economy, but the overall arching conclusion is that you know um, a lot of these so-called delivery jobs and Uber drivers and Lyft and food delivery, they are being made possible, or they're financially possible. They're viable in terms as a business model because wages are so low, and people are willing to sign on for minimum wage or even below when you factor in the cost of driving around and whatnot. So what's really happening is that Amazon is building a delivery system that is based on um, cost estimation, probabilistic cost estimation, right? And setting a metric that certain margin of error is acceptable as a cost, right? And then the whole driver program is also dependent on the fact that there is an ample pool of available workers, even eager workers, at the low wages that they pay, right? So it's interesting to think about the fact that such a large company, it's a little bit, to my mind, a little bit odd that they would risk their bloodline, the packages that are being delivered to market conditions that may in fact be very temporary. We're now talking about the labor market shortage, and you have to wonder whether Amazon is actually having enough drivers. They may have to raise wages or increase their rates. But anyways, so let's go on for a little bit more because I want to get the full flavor of what's happening to workers. Um, and so this is a really, really revealing quote that I really wanted um, to highlight. And this is a quote from a former engineer who helped design the system. And he's saying, executives knew this was going to shit the bed, this person said. That's actually how they put it in meetings. The only question is how much poo we wanted there to be. Okay, so if this is true, and I don't really doubt this kind of quote because I've been in the room where people have said this kind of stuff, but you know, um, this kind of approach to cost management is not that new. We're talking about AI, we're talking about robotics, but there have been scandals with regards to car companies where they realized there was a flaw in the design, but their own legal and financial analysis said it would be cheaper simply to deal with the lawsuits than to fix the design flaw, because then you'd have to recall all those cars and then replacement parts or whatever else that needed to be done. So there was a probabilistic assessment that let's just take the hit. We'll take the lawsuits. We'll hire legal teams and deal with it that way. So their system of risk management was simply to accept the design flaw. And we are seeing similar language here right? When executives talk about the fact that they knew there was going to be mistakes, they discussed it in meetings, right? And they said, what is the how much poo you wanted there to be. Well, that's really a colloquial way of saying what is the margin of error that we're willing to accept when it comes to errors in the algorithms. For example, when a delivery driver is fired from the program, even though conditions were beyond his control, right? And a lot of the article talks about drivers who, for example, they wanted to make a delivery, but it was inside an apartment complex with a locked door, right? So they've been giving a pre-dawn delivery date and time, and they go to the apartment complex, and they realize, hey, you know what? We can't make this delivery because the doors won't open. The gates won't open. Now you can't blame them for that. But does the algorithm really know that this is what's happening? No, not really. Right? You saw in the interview with the warehouse worker, he was saying either I'm scanning or I'm not being productive. Right? That's all that the algorithms really know. Not really intelligent. There's no really sophisticated AI here. It's simply the kind of metrics, performance metrics that a large corporation implements in terms of its management. Now, I do need to kind of step back and say there's a little bit of hypocrisy on my part because, to tell you the truth, in my own job, I design performance metrics, right? And so I'm kind of understanding how this kind of stuff happens because as part of my job, this is exactly what I do, right? I mean, it's not all that I do, but a big part of what I do is design performance metrics for company operations, and so I'm able to see both sides of the situation, right? It's very easy, or sorry, it's very difficult to design performance metrics that don't have unintended consequences, and yet people are being hurt by this. And in terms of the larger picture that we're seeing, if these metrics are being applied to everybody, you know, what does that really mean for us, you and me, in the workplace, right? Even for white collar jobs. I'm an economist, but who knows? I mean, maybe there's going to be a stopwatch. Watching me in terms of my productivity and my clicks. Whatever. You know what I mean? So I think we get the picture, and I'm gonna conclude the personal side of this with this note where this gentleman saying, whenever there's an issue, there's no support. It's you against the machine, so you don't even try. So let's really just think about that for a second. Remember how I was saying that work in this situation is a closed loop. The algorithm makes mistakes, and your only appeal is to appeal to the algorithms, right? That is like a one of those big brother insane bureaucracies. And yet we saw in the quote from the company that in fact they they knew this was going to happen, and they accepted this as a cost of business. Now the real reason is why are they willing to accept this cost and the reputational damage, because this article is on Bloomberg, right? And to make matters worse, let's take another article real quick, okay? Because right now, we're talking about Amazon firing its workers. Now, let's look at an article that talks about the workers firing Amazon, right? Specifically, delivery companies, right? So, this article is on Vice. Vice is it's a news outlet that has a very, very particular point of view. So we do need to be aware of that. But we're going to pay attention to, sorry, we're going to pay attention to the quotes that are here. And, there are quotes from the company lawyers, right? So, sorry, this is not working out the way I had planned. Um, Basically, Sorry about the headline mess up. I'm going to enlarge the thing. So basically, it talks about how two delivery companies um, have objected to the workload demands and the working conditions of Amazon. And they said, you know what, we would rather shut down our operations and not work for you, you know, because what happens is that these delivery companies sign contracts to be exclusive logistic partners with Amazon. And the truth is, they found out that the demands that are coming from Amazon are simply unsurmountable, in their opinion. Now, I'm sure there are other partner programs in other locations in other states who have had success with this, right? So this may or may not be a representative sample, but I thought some of the quotes that the company lawyers gave is quite revealing and gives us a further dimension to consider when we talk about the economics behind why all of this is happening. And I promise you, we will get to that. You know, um, so last week, two well-established Amazon delivery companies in Portland, Oregon, offered Amazon an ultimatum: agree to a set of conditions that it said would improve revenue and driver safety, or we'll stop delivering packages. Amazon refused, and the two companies in the Portland area terminated their contract with Amazon, their only client, effectively shutting down. So let's think about that. I mean, this company decided that the work conditions and the demands for delivery schedules were so onerous that they would rather shut down than continue their business with Amazon. Now, again, I want to say that these are two out of, I'm sure, many, many hundreds, maybe thousands of delivery companies. And so their experience may not be representative of the whole, but think about a business saying, "Would rather shut down and go out of business than continue working for Amazon." That is a pretty dramatic statement, right? So something serious must be happening, right? So they go through all the demands that they have, and the thing that really caught my eye, okay, so I'm going to enlarge the quote here, is that it says currently Amazon delivery drivers are expected to deliver upwards of 400 packages a day on 10-hour routes that often extend up to 12 hours. So when I read that passage, you know, I started to understand the plight of these delivery drivers, because can you imagine delivering 400 packages a day in 10 hours, driving from location to location? I don't know about the specific distances. I don't know if one stop had four packages or one packages. You never really know, but the sheer number of it, 400 packages a day, right? That's a lot of deliveries. I mean, that's wow. And it talks about drivers being forced to suspend safety monitors, run across busy four-lane highways, skip lunch breaks, and so on and so forth, and skip bathroom breaks, right? Now, do I believe that every delivery driver is going through this experience? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. I think we'd have a much wider revolt that's happening. But to me, this is symptomatic of the demands of a logistics company, because Amazon, in its essence, it really is a logistics company. The stuff that they sell is not unique to them. What makes them competitive, as Jeff Bezos fully understands, is the logistics efficiency, right? And so that is why he's pressing so hard on this algorithm management. And you get these kind of articles as part of the consequences, uh, you know, of this program. So, um, so that gives us a sense of the um, about the difficulties of working for algorithms. And at this point, you have to ask yourself, no matter what kind of work we do, especially if it's logistics, especially if it's involved with a lot of, fast-paced work, you know, um, algorithms can easily measure your performance. You know, this is even true in government, where certain agencies also have quotas in terms of how much work they need to process. I think some people might be surprised that the government, has performance quotas and performance metrics, but in fact they do. I do work for the government, and I see it in the inside, right? So, with regards to Amazon, though, we really need to ask ourselves what's happening here, because there's all this talk about the glorious future of the AI, right? Well, there's been two kind of conflicting futures that have been predicted by people about AI, which is one is that the robots are going to take all our jobs, right? And the other future has been that they're going to free us from the repetitive grinding day-to-day labor so that we can be more productive as humans, right? And there's no surprise that maybe the future isn't any of those things. It's actually something more mundane and not surprising. And we're going to get into that right now. Okay, so in order to understand what's really happening with Amazon and why all this talk about the glorious future of the AI is happening is for us to take a quick look at their operating margin. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, operating margin simply means their revenues minus the cost of actually operating the business, which doesn't include any kind of debt payments or any kind of financial obligations, right? This is what happens after you subtract the cost of operations, such as delivery drivers and warehouse workers and office workers and whatnot, right? So let's take a quick look, right? So this chart right here shows Amazon's profit margins from 2006 to, well, right now, right? And remember that they instituted the driver program in 2015, which would be right around here, right? And then you saw in the article there were those delivery companies that signed up into the partnership program, and they revolted, but that was sometime in 2018. And I want to say first off that this is not it's not a detailed analysis that I'm doing here, because there's so much stuff that goes into the end result of the operating margin. But we also know that logistics, as in the delivery drivers and the warehouse operations and the delivery company partnership programs, are hugely impactful to Amazon's revenue and their margins. So take a look at what's happening here. In around 2014, their margins were almost non-existent, 0.11%, right? And then around 2015, they implemented the uh, the Prime Day, fast shipping delivery drivers, right? And their operating profit started to go up, right? Right. Now it did experience somewhat of a decline later on, but then you also know that in 2018, that's when they instituted the delivery uh, partner program for companies, right? For example, the two companies that said, basically take this job and shove it, because we'd rather go out of business than work for Amazon. Now, again, I want to emphasize that there's a lot that goes into this operating margin, but it's curious that once they started implementing, here, let me show the larger margin. Sorry about that. Once they implemented in 2015 their their delivery driver system as independent contractors, their margins started to climb at a brisk pace. You know, reached a peak in June 2016. It started to decline, and then in 2018 they implemented the uh, the delivery uh, company partner program, and then guess what? It started to go up again, and then it went back down. And I'm sure this little dip right here, um, There's a lot going on here. It may be related to the pandemic. It may be related to some other cost that they incurred. But isn't it odd that at the 2 points where they implemented these kind of algorithm programs, right? Their their operating margin went up, and once again, when they implemented an algorithm program for companies, their operating margin went up again. So let's talk about that. Amazon and a lot of companies out there are talking about AI as if it is some sort of panacea, that it is the intelligence, because they emphasize not the artificial part, but the intelligence side, and saying it is more effective. Jeff Bezos was saying they make better decisions than people. Is that really true? Well, actually, it is. According to the quote from the engineer who worked on the system inside, this program is considered a big success. And why wouldn't they? If you're sitting on the board of director for Amazon, right, and you see these profit margins keep going up and up because you implemented these programs, right? Why would you not consider that a success? You saw in the quote from the boardroom that they knew that there was a margin error, and they said we would rather not investigate issues with false termination or wrongful termination, because um, the return from that would be less than the actual cost of conducting the investigation. And said, you know what, we're just going to let it go. And that's why they created this algorithmic feedback loop that said when you appeal to the algorithms, you got to talk to the algorithms, right? That is basically management way of saying we don't really care. We accept that what's happening to you is part of the cost of business, right? And that is actually one of the functions of algorithms, right? I mean, it's just there's always going to be a margin for error, and of course, human judgment is also there too. But I think with regards to this exception, when there's a mistake by the algorithm, it would only make sense to have a human person intervene. Um, you know, but that's not the case. And the closed loop that they have with regards to the appeal system is so revealing, right? So when you hear all this talk about, this is the AI, the future is the AI, the future is intelligent managing, efficiency, better decision making. The reality that many people experience, in fact, the reality for Amazon is not only that better decisions are being made, because what do you mean by better? You know, um, Managing cost at the expense of the human experience might be defined as better because your operating margins are going up. Is that really good for business? Well, that's for them to decide. Amazon is entitled to run their business, the way that they see fit. They are a private enterprise, so they're entitled to do that. However, my objection to all this talk, and this is really, um, you know, my conclusion with regards to what's happening with Amazon and a lot of companies, and these algorithms are going to spread out to more and more company, is that the future of AI sounds futuristic, but it's actually the same age-old process or a practice that corporations and large companies have engaged in for many years, for decades, you know, um, which is cost cutting. It's cost containment program, right? The purpose of AI, when they say it makes better decisions, is not to maximize the satisfaction of the workers. It may not even be to maximize the satisfaction of customers, because there was a quote from one Amazon executive saying, even if there's a mistake in the delivery, we accept that because the algorithms allow us to keep our costs low, and we know that eventually they'll get their packages. And you know what? Actually, I experienced that myself. Lately, I've ordered a number of things from Amazon, and I was surprised, but the delivery was lost in transit, so I had to reorder the product or order from a different seller. So those mistakes, in essence, are built into the system, you know. And the real point of all this talk about AI and the bright, shiny future is not about the bright, shiny future. It's about the age-old practice of containing cost, squeezing suppliers, quite possibly extracting higher productivity, from your workers to increase your operating margin. That's how you run a successful business. But we see that with the implementation of AI and the constant monitoring of the performance metrics, it represents a very, very real challenge to workers. But really, it all comes down to cutting costs. So that's my thought on what's happening with the algorithms right now. And so Sunday, I'm going to talk about what's happening with the housing market. It's red hot right now, but there are some signs that things are cooling. So we'll take a look at the data, and I'll see you in the next video.